and got kind of the far to this corner and saw the skunk, and he starts making some weird noises, and he starts turning around, and so I apologized and then slowly backed away and took all my measurements upstairs instead of down there. Yeah.
Hey, this is Blake Davis with ProTech Inspections, joined by Wes Zitnay of Upstate Structural Repair for episode 4 of Truth Over Harmony podcast. Please take a moment to take a look at all of our contract partners as they support us and support you. And also take a moment to find us on Facebook and Instagram, Pro-Tech Inspections, and be sure to like and subscribe. Wes, thank you for joining us. This is episode numero cuatro, number 4 of Truth Over Harmony podcast.
My pleasure.
Wes is the owner of Upstate Structural Repair and one of our fond partners that we had the pleasure of working with. So, Wes, thank you for joining us this afternoon. It is February 22nd, and we are filming episode 4 of Truth Over Harmony. Thank you guys for tuning in. Let's just go ahead and jump on into it, brother.
Thanks for having me.
So one of the first questions I always like to ask folks when they come in is, how did you guys get started? What's your story in getting started in the Upstate?
Well, in answering that, I'll have to correct your statement at the beginning. I don't own the company.
Okay.
Which is okay. I manage the day-to-day operations of the company, so that's the role I get to play. I met the owner when I moved to Greenville, I don't know, it was a decade-ish ago. And we hired him to do some repairs on our house that needed it, and we kind of became friends through that. And he spent 3 years convincing me to quit my job and come work for him. So about 6 or 7 years ago, I made the jump, left at the time I was in big box retail management with Target. And always found power tools and construction and building things far more enjoyable than stocking shelves and selling people trinkets at Target. So he made a compelling case, and I left and joined him. At the time, a little before, when I met him, he was running a full-scale remodel renovations company, did additions, that sort of thing. And the way he tells the story is that they started fixing some termite damage because they were doing a big kitchen repair and needed level floors and had to smooth things out. And one day he looks up, real estate agents are referring him because he would fix their houses, and now they're bringing him in to solve problems when they're selling houses. And he looked up and realized that half the business he was doing was structural repair and half was the remodel, and he liked the structural repair stuff better. We always joke that in structural repair, I don't have to make a Pinterest board come to life. I just have to fix a problem. So that delivering on expectations can be a little more enjoyable on that side. And so he closed the one company, reopened as Upstate Structural Repair. And so when I joined him, it was him and a helper and I. And then from there, we've been kind of growing through being a member of the community, working with real estate agents, trying to make their lives easier, trying to make sure their houses close, being just a good, honest kind of company in an area that isn't known for that. And so we try to do that for people. But we went from remodels, building houses, to now we just fix structure, foundation, and some moisture stuff.
Yeah, very cool. And I mean, that's, I think, one of the reasons why the partnership between our two companies is so strong is just the way that you guys go about doing business is so similar with the way that we do it. Just having the integrity, take care of the client, take care of the end user, whoever you're serving, and the money will figure itself out later kind of thing.
Yeah. We always say there's enough broken houses. I don't need to make up problems with yours. There's plenty out there that we can fix. So if you don't need our services, we'll be the first person to tell you you don't need our services.
Which is really valuable at the end of the day. A lot of people won't do that. So how many folks do y'all have working over there right now? I don't know if I've asked you that before.
It seems like it fluctuates day to day, not day to day, month to month, that kind of thing. But we're around 10-ish folks that make up. So we've got myself does some of our inspections. We've got 2 other guys that do that full time. And then depending on what the job brings us or what each task requires that day, I always say we have 2.5 crews that are out there doing repairs full time.
I got you. Very cool. Well, and you had talked earlier on termites. You mentioned that a little bit. That's something that we as inspectors obviously see a lot of.
Yeah.
And you on the structural side and being in crawl spaces see a lot of as well. Let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, termite damage is something that can be viewed as a deal killer. A lot of things that get you guys involved may or may not be considered a deal killer in the real estate world. So let's talk about that. What do you guys see on that front? Is it always as bad as it seems? Is it really as big of a deal killer as it may sound?
Yeah. So I like to think of, in the world of real estate transactions, we tend to be providing a service that your lender requires is done. Often if you're going through financing, they don't like when a house has foundation or structural problems.
Understandable.
Oh, correct. Yeah. It's smart on their case. The way I kind of think of it, realtors will tell you it's a location business. I'm with them. We can fix just about anything on a house except the location. House movers sometimes will adjust that, but for the most part, the location, the house is where it's at. Everything else can be repaired. So foundation problems, structural problems, termite damage doesn't need to be a reason to run away. I know most pest control guys will tell you something to the effect of you either have a house with no termite damage or a house that's going to have termite damage. So where we are in the United States, they're here. They're under your house. That's not changing. You just got to do the right things to keep them away. But they don't eat unrepairable things. They eat the repairable stuff. So all the wood stuff in your house can get swapped out for new.
Right. So more or less, it's not as big of a deal killer as folks may believe.
No, and if you have a lot of bad termite damage, there's checks to be written, but we'll do the bad stuff.
Yeah.
We'll hang out in the unpleasant spaces. We'll do all the nasty stuff to make them go away and the hard stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all fixable for sure.
Yeah, very true. So you guys are obviously big into the structural side of things, right?
That's right.
Something that we try and stay away from in our reports is using the verbiage structural engineer, because typically, like we were just talking about, if you need a structural engineer to come out to a home, that's probably not a good sign. So, do most homes really need a structural engineer?
So, to become a structural engineer, you need a little more education than you need to do some of the other stuff that's involved in fixing a house.
Yep.
So, more education, they get their fancy offices, they get these nice little stamps they can put on documents that makes them official. But because they have all those things, if they're leaving their office, they're getting paid. Whereas in our line of work, there's an expectation that if there's potential repairs to be made, we come out and look at things for free. So starting with us is probably always the right thing to do, just economically. I understand that within a due diligence window, they're the slowest moving typically to get to a place. We rush because we know we have to, and they come when their schedule allows. But more often than not, homes do not require a structural engineer to diagnose the problems. So if termites ate a board and the solution is to replace the board, we don't need a structural engineer to tell us that board needs to be replaced. And we've done enough of them, we don't need them to tell us how to do it. And typically they don't know how to do it, they just know it needs to happen. So where we find that structural engineers need to get involved in kind of diagnosing the problems of a house is when the repair requires actual designing. And typically that means we're changing something about the house, not repairing something that's already there. Every once in a while, whether, if we're trying to figure out, did the original design use the right connection here? But that tends to be just big open floor plan stuff, right? Not your typical ranch home. If you're not taking a wall out, we don't need an engineer involved in anything on those. So we bring them in when big walls are disappearing and we need an engineered design on something, or when something's being added on. But without a structural modification, you probably don't need an engineer. The great thing is we know when we've got to the point where you need one. So if you start with us, again, we're going to tell you, hey, I can give you an idea of what this might look like. but really we're going to need this guy to come take a look. We
Yeah.
know when we're in too deep.
Yeah. Well, and you brought up a good point there. You were kind of talking about, well, if you're taking down a wall, then you need to bring one in because that could affect the structural integrity of the home, right? So there's a difference between structural and foundation in a home.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what that difference is, because a lot of folks, especially home buyers, right? They're like, well, foundation and structure are two in the same, right? But in your line of work, it to be a bit different than that.
For most people, foundation is everything under your feet. We like to say that all the concrete bits of the house are the foundation. Now, sure, are there nuances in there where some of the bricks are not really foundation elements and they're just kind of architectural? That happens.
Right.
But if it's made out of wood, that tends to be your structure. Mm-hmm. And if it's made out of concrete, that tends to be your foundation. Mm-hmm. And they require different solutions and to repair both of those items. But
right.
Foundation problems, I would say on the whole, are far less common than structural problems.
Now, in terms of pricing, it sounds like your foundation issues would be typically a little bit more cost efficient than replacing structural. Is that more so the case, or it's really just kind of case by case?
It's case by case in the sense that a lot of both can be expensive, right? Mm-hmm. A whole lot of framing being done is going to cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
Rebuilding the flooring system of a house is magnitudes more difficult when the house is already over your head than it is when you're just building the house from start. Mm-hmm. So a lot of framing can be really expensive, but a bunch of foundation support can be really expensive too. So it kind of both have the potential to be a lot, both have the potential to be smaller on that end. Most of the foundation repairs that happen around here tend to be the installation of deep foundation products, meaning instead of trying to get your house to sit kind of on the dirt or just a little below the dirt up here, we're driving by one mechanism or another steel into the ground 20 to 30 feet and then letting the house attach to that. So it doesn't matter what kind of soil you have. It doesn't matter what erosion you have. You're way underground now for all your support, and that kind of takes out the problem. So obviously, just that just sounds expensive, and it can be when you do a bunch of it. But so can reframing half the house.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, something that we do a lot of, and a lot of realtors these days have been seeing a lot more of, because inventory is low, prices on your homes are significantly higher than what they have been in the past. Rates are a little bit higher as well. So it's a bit more cost effective for clients and home buyers to be able to purchase these manufactured homes and mobile homes, things like that. So that's something that a lot of folks are looking towards. We do a lot of FHA and HUD certifications on these homes. What's some things that you guys see in that area in terms of being able to certify those homes or do the repairs? I understand that you guys don't do the actual certification itself.
Right. We leave that to you. Yeah.
You can get it to where it needs to be so that we can then turn around and do that.
So on those projects, HUD's kind of a different story. Sometimes they're providing some help financially, and money can get held up in there, and that scares contractors away because everybody got into this business to get paid. Nobody loves getting paid months down the road, but it happens.
You don't run a charity?
Some days feels like it. Some folks try to turn you into one.
Yeah.
But no, at the end of the day, we've got to run a profitable company. But what we're seeing the same stuff on our line is that folks are, like we said earlier, is this house, do we just write it off for foundation structural problems? We're moving more towards there aren't a lot of options, so we got to do the things to make those work. HUD and FHA are a little more stringent on their lending categories, typically because they're owning a bigger chunk of the home. If the bank is putting down 93%, 97% of the cost of the house, and those are higher risk loans, they want to make sure that the product that they may own is in better shape than a conventional mortgage. And so they're going to typically require a higher standard of repairs. And that doesn't mean anything other than you might need to do more stuff up front to get that house to closing. And there's options for doing that. We won't get into the other creative financing side of things, but there's ways to get it done. But all that to say, when it comes to your termite damage, your dry rot, your moisture problems, your foundation stuff, we're an option for helping you get that house across the finish line.
Yeah. And something that we see when we're doing these FHA certifications is half the time when we're not able to clear them, it's just because there's been an addition put onto the home. Maybe they put on a new front porch or some steps going off the back or something.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's not properly supported. That add-on isn't properly supported. And those homes are specifically engineered to withstand that weight of the home and nothing more than that.
Yeah, they're not designed to be modified.
Right. So, do you guys see in terms of repairs and getting them to that point, what kind of repair work are you guys seeing more of on your side of things for those?
So for an addition that's trying to use the original structure support, it's typically just decoupling those things. So, I would love if all decks were freestanding. I would love if all additions to old homes had 100% their old foundation and we just kind of made them touch at the end. Not everybody does that. You can retrofit all those things. And so it's typically, we're just taking the weight off of one thing and making sure it goes to the ground instead of trying to get to the ground through the original house.
Right.
A lot of times what we see, though, on not just manufactured homes and not just, other mobile home options, but even just FHA financing on an older home, is that you're going to have settlement in a porch. You could have a crack in a brick veneer. You could have something that's not a foundation or structural element that an appraiser noted somewhere, or it's noted in the inspection as we just need to make sure this isn't a problem. Well, when the bank looks at that, and again, these are higher risk in their category and they don't want to take anything on, they want all those questions answered. And so a lot of the times it doesn't fall in the certification process, but they want somebody who looks at these things for a living, somebody who carries a contractor's license or a residential builder's license to state that this isn't a risk for you. And it's, again, they're just giving the risk to me. And so we do a fair amount of coming to look at those things and evaluating.
Just consultations.
Just saying, hey, this porch it's not attached. It's a big old piece of concrete on backfill, sunk a little bit. It's no big deal. Let's get these people moved in. So.
And that's the thing that we get a lot of, right? And regardless if it's a mobile home or not, it's just, you get that inspection report back and it's a scary thing, right? Because there's always problems with it. There ain't a perfect house out there.
That's right.
So some of those things come back and it's like, oh my God, this is going to cost me a ton of money to get all this stuff replaced. When in reality, it's really not as serious as it may appear. You just got to talk to somebody that knows exactly what they're doing. They do this every day and say, hey, this isn't a huge issue. If you want us to come out and make the repair, it's not, going to affect the structural integrity of your home, but it's good to notate these kind of things. So I think that's really valuable there.
Your home inspector's job is to find problems.
Yeah.
If you came out there, did the home inspection, turned it back and just said, everything looks great, nobody's happy. Well, maybe the person selling the house thinks that's wonderful, right? But
someone's probably happy.
If I'm buying the house and I paid you to find all the problems and you come back and say there's no problems, you know darn well who I'm cursing for the next 2 years every time I run into the smallest thing. Right? So the job of the home inspector is to inspect what feels like an 1,000-item checklist from the broadest spectrum of things to outlets, to the lights working, to does this faucet turn or leak, down to the siding and the roof. It's a lot. It's every little bit of everything in the house. And you want them to find those things and notate all those things. And I think it's then up to the person buying the house not to be an expert on all those categories, but different buyers will have different levels of concerns, right? So it could be the past experience. The last house they owned is playing a role into the thing that concerns them to the most. But it's a way to then say, hey, here's where you need an expert to come really dig into these things. And I feel for the people who are selling the house and get one of those back. It's my home. I've lived in here for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
I love it. It's the perfect place. We've never had any problems.
Yep.
And now someone's telling you that, it makes you feel like your house is a pile of junk, and that's not what it means.
And that you just haven't taken any care of it at all.
And you're like, but I've worked so hard, and you have, and it's fine. It's okay. Most of your buyers are going to look at the vast majority of those things and be like, yeah, I get that.
Mm-hmm.
We've all seen things on home inspection reports that feel a little ridiculous, but they're there, and you got to note them. And because if you didn't, that's when people get upset.
Yeah.
When you don't catch.
Yeah,
stuff.
absolutely. And that's another thing that I really love about the referral tech community and all of our contract partners is, we get those calls from clients or realtors all the time being like, hey, I saw this in the report. What do we need to do about this? Because a realtor is not an expert in plumbing or in structural or any of those fields, So,
I want them to be an expert in selling the house.
Yeah, exactly. But I love the fact that we have partners like you guys to be able to say, hey, I'm not a structural expert.
Yeah.
I know that this may be of concern. It could be, but it very well could not be anything of really any concern. But it is something that we wanted to notate in there so you're aware.
Yeah.
Let me put you in touch with Wes and his team over at Upstate Structural. They'll talk you through it and make sure that it's, verify if it is an actual concern or not kind of thing.
Right. And whether it's an inspection y'all did or somebody else did, I'm only going to refer you, but I won't discriminate from looking at anybody else's reports. And so we will review any agent's home inspection at zero cost. And they could send me every single one they get, and that's fine. We'll look through them all. And if we see something in there that, in our opinion, is concerning enough that we should come take a look at it, we'll come take a look.
Yeah.
And if everything looks fine, we'll be the first person to tell you everything looks fine.
Yeah. And if you're listening and you heard that and that is not enough to sell you on Upstate Structural Repair, then I don't know what to tell you at that point.
Send them over.
That's just that's the way to do business right there, So talking about some of the things that home inspectors do and, quote unquote miss or, your home inspector should have found that kind of thing. We get those calls all the time.
Absolutely.
Realtors get those calls all the time. You help us deal with a lot of those calls, right? So what are some common things that you guys find when crawling around under up a house or walking around that you're, maybe a client was saying, well, wouldn't the home inspector, shouldn't they have found that? What's some common things that you guys come across that you're like, maybe not?
I think if you go and look at a house, and again, you have that 1,000-piece checklist to look at, and the Lord didn't bless you with X-ray vision, there's a chance that you're not going to see everything. It just happens. That's an option. I write estimates, and our guys write estimates all the time that say, this is what we think's there, and once we open the drywall, it could be something else.
Yep.
Because who knows? If we go back to that termite topic, they're nasty little buggers. They don't always eat the wood that you can see. And so sometimes it looks like you got damage that's only this couple feet. But then they went to the inside and it goes for another 20. And there's no way to know until you start cutting it and open it up. The other kind of unfortunate thing is that a home inspection happens over a day, a half a day.
Yeah.
It's an hour-long process,
3 hours,
right?
pretty much.
You're not there for a week. You don't get to live in the house and run all the plumbing for a week.
We just test drive it.
Really, you don't get to stress the dishwasher to see if you can push the plumbing too far. And so many things when it comes to like structural stuff or crawl space issues. We just go to the crawl space, for instance, where stuff gets missed. You are in the dark trying to find all the problems. So that you're at a disadvantage there. But that's also an open air environment in the sense that it's connected to the outside. It's part of the outside. Your job is to provide an accurate snapshot of that moment in time when you were there.
Right.
And so if we have a really dry day and that air test is really dry, all you can put in your report is what the humidity reading was, what the wood actually read. That doesn't mean that the other 364 days of the year that's the number. It's just the number then. And so we see that from time to time is that the crawl space test's dry. And the good home inspectors will note on there all the other symptoms that say it's probably not dry the rest of the year, right? You're going to note the microbial growth. You're going to note the falling insulation. You're going to note the puddle of water that's over there. And that's another one. If you were there while it was raining, or you were there and it hasn't rained for a week, and you might note the staining and signs of water, but you're not going to see any standing water because it hasn't rained.
Right.
There's no plumbing leaking.
Right.
And then the homeowner sticks his head under there to look at the crawl space the next day after it's rained for 16 hours. And there's a big old puddle, and they want to know, well, how did he miss the puddle?
Right.
He didn't miss it. It wasn't there, right? So those areas are impacted by the weather. They're impacted by what's going on outside that day. The other thing is that when I go to a house, I'm only looking at the narrowest spectrum of stuff. I will never test your dishwasher, right? I'm not going to see if your outlets are grounded. I could care less. But I am going to look at the joists in the framing and how your house is put together. And so is there a chance that a plumbing penetration that cut a joist catches my eye and it doesn't catch the home inspector's eye? Maybe. But if you're in a 2,000 square foot crawl space, there's a lot of floor joists down there.
Yep.
And it's hard to find and look for every plumbing penetration. And so, sure, some of that stuff could get missed or overlooked. I would say the vast majority of things that would fall into that category, though, are low dollar repairs. If you have thousands of dollars of termite damage in the crawl space that I could catch from doing an inspection, I'd be really surprised if your home inspector doesn't catch it too.
Yep. Yeah. And that's something that we try and train all of our guys on is, basically be able to almost do your own CO100 without doing the CO100 basically. I mean, you got to be able to look for termites and help do that kind of stuff.
Look for wood that doesn't look good.
Yeah.
Poke some stuff, right? It's not super scientific to test if it's damaged or not. We're just poking at it, seeing if the integrity is still there.
Yep. Very cool. Very cool. So, I mean, I think that covers at least a good chunk of our educational kind of content. We always like to end on a more entertaining note than we do to start with. It's all seriousness, and then it's fun and games a little bit towards the end. So we always like to just do like 5 random questions. Of all of our guests that come on towards the end of the show.
Let's do it.
Or podcast, rather. So first off, I actually got to experience this a little bit earlier this week. Rode along with an inspector and was down up under a crawl space. And I'm a taller guy, and it is not ideal for me to get up under a crawl space all that much, especially if it's a low-hanging one. So, is there a height or weight requirement or anything like that for folks to go up under a crawl space?
I hope he doesn't watch that. I don't want to throw the owner under the bus, but when he brought me in to this, and he and I used to do all the repairs and all the inspections together, he's pushing like 6'2", and he is multiple pant sizes larger than I am, and we would get into lots of places together. In terms of like a minimum repair height, it's somewhere around 18 inches, just in the sense that just because you can wiggle back there doesn't mean you can get back there with tools and materials and
right, because that's a whole different ball game.
Things, right? So it tends to be, a whole house at 18 inches is really hard. A spot at 18 inches, we can manage. But there's some restrictions. There are plenty of times, not modern homes, because code now helps us with this. You have to have 18 inches of clearance. That's a code requirement now.
Right.
But back before we were playing by any rules whatsoever, you get inches and stuff, and that doesn't mean anything can't be fixed. Just the floors come out. You do it that way.
Yep. Yeah, we always like to say, talking to our inspectors, and if they're like, I couldn't get into that part of the crawl space, it was all blocked off, and I couldn't get up under this, ductwork or something. We'll say, well, look, if Dave could get up under there, then you can get up under there. Trust me. So that excuse is invalid. Sorry.
Yeah. I've gotten into places that I was worried how I was going to turn around and get out, but they can get a little tight.
Yeah. So speaking of, getting up under a crawl space, it's dark. It can be a little muggy. It's an area that tends to be neglected just because, you're homeowner and walking around down there every day. What's the craziest thing that you've come across in a crawl space in your years doing this line of work?
Family of skunks. Yeah.
Active or inactive?
I mean, it was very clear what sort of problems the house had. I had a very good understanding of how the house was framed. It was 100% needed to be replaced, just dry rot everywhere. And got kind of the farthest corner and saw the skunk, and he starts making some weird noises, and he starts turning around. And so, I apologized and then slowly backed away and took all my measurements upstairs instead of down there. Yeah.
So did you go home wearing some new perfume? Your wife?
I didn't get sprayed. and yeah, I mean, there's stuff down there. Things do live in there. That's not ideal. Cats frequently we run into.
Any snakes or
I mean, they're there.
Like that?
I have seen them. I don't get involved with them.
I try and stay away from them as much as I can.
That's right.
I'm not a big fan of them.
I know when and where I should or shouldn't be pulling insulation. I try not to meet them.
Yeah.
If I can make it happen.
All right. Well, so, we were talking earlier about some dives around town, things like that, some new builds going on around town. You were mentioning Bridge City Coffee earlier.
Yeah.
What, we'll take folks out, meet. I think you and I actually met for coffee when we first met. Yeah. Where is your kind of go-to spot around town? You going to go grab a cup?
Oh, man. Bridge City's really good. I do enjoy their coffee. There's what's the one that's by? It used to be Birds Fly South, the brewery. There's a little roaster down there that has some good.
I forget the name of that place, but I know.
Terrible plug for them, right? Yeah. That coffee shop by the brewery that's out of business. Yeah, they're good too.
Yeah. I love that. So, you were telling me a little bit about your home life, and you guys got a big family and a big household. What's some stuff that you and the family like to go out and do on a given outing?
Yeah. Big. We've got a big family and a small household. That's how we just pack them all in there. So we like getting out with our kids and doing stuff. Don't get to do nearly enough of it, but anytime we can get out on the lake is a great outing. Kids love it. So we try to get out there with friends on a regular basis.
Yeah. Y'all go to Lake Kiwi or Hartwell more?
Kiwi or Jocassee.
Okay. Jocassee.
Tends to be, yeah.
It's beautiful up there.
Yeah, they're nice for some kayaking and stand-up paddleboarding. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. A lot better than the murky waters of Lake Hartwell. Oh, man. Yeah. So I think that takes 4 of the 5 questions. Last one. You originally are not from Greenville, South Carolina, are you?
That's correct. Yeah.
Now, where did you move from to refresh my memory?
Born and raised in Southeast Minnesota, got here via California.
Okay.
So I was in Los Angeles for school and fortunately to find a wife, and then we came here about, I can never keep track of it. It's been 10 or 11 years we've been in Greenville. Yeah.
Right. So you're more or less a local now at this point. You're starting. You've got at least 80% of your local badge being here for that length of time.
Yeah.
So you understand the dynamics that is the upstate area and South Carolina as a whole. So that leads me into the ultimate question that really determines if you're a good guy or a bad guy.
I think I know where this is going. Yeah.
If you had to. Come November after Thanksgiving, Saturday, who are you pulling for, the Tigers or the Gamecocks?
It's going to be the Tigers. Yeah.
I love you, Wes. I always love having you around, but
our company colors are the same as yours.
And,
all of our cars are orange.
I try to tell Dave that there's just a better looking color that we could all be wearing, but he likes to have dirt associated with us because we're crawling around in crawl spaces. But, I think that's something about that garnet and black just looks better. You know, I think it looked great on you guys. Maybe if you want to consider rewrapping those trucks, do a little rebranding or
maybe
something.
On the next round. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll help you out with it. Give you some good ideas for it. So, well, cool. That's, I think that kind of wraps up with episode 4, Truth Over Harmony. You got any other things that you guys want to plug in?
I mean, I think we see our role in the industry as being an honest partner for homeowners, providing practical solutions for things. And when it comes to helping real estate agents, you know, our mission for real estate agents is to get your house to that closing line. And we're willing to do a whole lot of things to make that happen in terms of quick inspections, repairs out of escrow, working with your buyers and sellers to come to an understanding, you know, reviewing your home inspections. We want to be a partner in making those things happen because, let's be honest, most homeowners aren't going under their crawl spaces. That home inspector might be the first person down there in 15 years. And I'd like to get invited to that.
Yeah.
So we want to build those relationships and be a partner in that.
Yeah. Well, and folks, you know, Upstate Structural, if you're not using them, haven't used them in the past, I would highly encourage you to. There's a big difference then in a contractor that is looking to make a buck versus someone that is trying to be a partner in your business and help you grow your business. Yeah. Obviously, you got to make your money along the way, but there's a big difference in those two approaches. Yeah. And I think that that's really why we mesh so well with each other, and our companies have been so close in this partnership since really day one. So awesome. So we'll have Wes's contact info here, so be sure to click like, subscribe, follow, shoot him a text, email, all the above. If you need to get in touch with them and you weren't able to get it on the podcast, shoot me a text, 864-790-0009. You can always get in touch with us at our main office line, 864-386-3810. Be sure to follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all the above. Pro-Tech Inspections. Thank you, and we will see you on episode 5.
Thank you.